Whenever there is a mention of heritage, old traditions, and customs, invariably two thought streams seem to emerge. One says, burn the old, throw it away, while the other says, old is gold. Do we have to choose between one or the other of these conflicting ideologies? Or is there a golden mean between the two? Can we create a constantly evolving, ever new culture? A culture that's created by weaving together the threads from the ancient wisdom and the pragmatism and knowledge of today? That is what we attempt to do here. Hello, you are listening to the podcast Something Old, Something New, and I am your host, Rohini Abhyankar. Part 13, The Enchanting Tale of Vinata and Kadru. Today's story takes us back to the Adi Parva of Mahabharata one more time. Adi Parva, the background, the context of Mahabharata. This narrative reveals that some significant events of the main storyline of Mahabharata are rooted in some curses put on certain characters. It also reveals the mental complexities leading to such curses. The saga of Vinata and Kadru attempts to present events that seem impossible and provides explanations for them in the form of engaging tales. For instance, why did the churning of the ocean happen? What caused the enmity between Devas, the gods, and the Danavas, demons? These events are narrated in a fast forward cinematic manner, showing a snapshot of what probably transpired over an extended duration of time, such as the Samudra Manthan, churning of the ocean, and other notable events of that era. The secrets and skills of Vyasa, the master storyteller, lie in the numerous stories that are carried from the previous births of many characters. Vyasa's narration and the corresponding depiction is grand and akin to the magnificence of Hollywood and Bollywood movies like Bahubali, Lord of the Rings, and others. While many fascinating narratives emerge from events in today's story and leave us awestruck, they all converge to form a beautiful mosaic of interconnected narratives. There is a Sanskrit saying which says Vyaso Chishtam Jagat Sarvam, which means whatever anyone speaks, writes, is something which is already uttered or written by sage Vyasa. So let us pay our respects to sage Vyasa, the great storyteller, historian, and sage, by bowing our heads before him and begin our journey into the tales of today. The story today is about two sisters, Vinata and Kadru, two of Daksha's many daughters. Daksha gave both these daughters in marriage to sage Kashyap. Kashyap was responsible for procreation on the earth in the early days and is considered one of the Prajapatis, someone responsible for the well being of the masses. One day, pleased with Vinata and Kadru, Kashyap granted each of them a boon. Ask whatever you want and it shall be granted, he said. Kadru asked for 1,000 powerful sons. Vinata also asked for 2 sons with a conditional clause that they had to be mightier and more magnificent than Kadru's 1,000 sons. Sage Kashyap agreed, and as fate would have it, in Mahabharata, a twist was added to the narrative. I am sure you see what I am pointing to. Vinata did not only ask for 2 sons, but by asking for 2 sons mightier than Kadru's 1,000, she struck a blow in the rivalry between the two sisters. Vinata's wish was granted, and she brought forth 2 eggs, and Kadru 1,000. The question about why Kashyap and his human wives brought forth eggs is answered by Vyas down in the storyline, and we'll get to that part in due time. The eggs were kept in a safe, warm, and secluded place, and after a few days, Kadru's 1,000 sons were born. They were serpents or nagas. I looked up the word Kadru in the Monier-Williams Sanskrit dictionary, and one of the meanings of the word is the earth. Kadru's offsprings were born, but Vinata's egg was still unbroken. Vinata, according to the dictionary, means someone who's bent over, subservient posture, bearing a subservient posture. She waited for 500 years. In Mahabharata and other scriptures of the times, the terms such as 1,000 or 500 are indicators of a long period of time. They may not necessarily be 1,000 years or 500 years as we know them today. To me, they also indicate the author's way of pointing to the process of evolution. Not wanting to be left behind in the race with her sister, Vinata scratched and tapped one egg and ultimately opened it to see the progress of the baby inside. As the egg cracked open, a child emerged who had a human bust and an underdeveloped lower body that looked like a snake's body. The child got angry at his mother's impatience and put a curse on her. He said that because of her haste, impatience, and imaginary competition with Kadru, she had caused him great harm, and so she would be forced to become Kadru's slave. He continued on to say that if Vinata was patient and did not disturb the other egg, that other child would one day set Vinata free from her servitude. Later, that child was recognized as Aruna, who became the charioteer of the sun. Now, how did that happen is another story for another time. But due to this curse, another seed was cast from which another series of stories began. This branched off story narrative eventually culminated into the Nagas getting deceived by the demigods and being permanently deprived of the nectar, ambrosia, or amrit. Amidst all this, a separate incident unfolds while Vinata waits for the birth of her second child. One day, as Vinata and Kadru watch the evening sunset, they notice a stunning white horse approaching them from afar. The horse leisurely yet gracefully wanders about, capturing their attention. Kadru asks Vinata a question in a playful manner. What color would the tail of this approaching white horse be? White or black? Let's make a bet. The one who guesses wrong will have to be the other's slave. Vinata accepts the bet and confidently states that the horse's tail would be white. Kadru, on the other hand, insists that it would be black. By this time it's dark, so they both decide to take a close look at the horse's tail the following morning to determine its color accurately. Kadru, feeling fearful, worries about the outcome. If the horse's tail is white, then she fears she would lose the bet and would have to become Vinata's slave. Kadru instructs her 1,000 sons to change their forms to appear like black hair so they can enter the horse's tail and deceive Vinata. This would make her believe that the horse's tail is black, thinks Kadru. Upon hearing Kadru's plan, her sons refuse to obey her and reject her request outright. Kadru is now afraid and angry and puts a curse on her sons, saying that one day they will all burn and perish in a fire. This is yet another inflection point in the story, and the branched narrative culminates in the snake sacrifice conducted by Janamejaya down the line, what's popularly known as the Sarpa Satra. Realizing the severity of the curse, the snakes are now feeling fearful of their own mother. Hoping that she may take the curse back, the majority of them do their mother's bidding and take on hair-like shapes and turn black in color and go hide in the tail of the white steed. The next morning, Vinata and Kadru go and examine the tail of the horse. They find the tail to be black. just as Kadru had claimed. Vinata accepts her defeat and becomes Kadru's slave. Now let's explore the story of the white steed, the white horse that had emerged from the churning of the ocean or Samudra Manthan. Samudra Manthan was a significant event where the Devas and the Danavas churned the ocean to obtain various divine treasures. Most of us know the story, so I will not go into it here. However, a few important details from that story need to be mentioned here for the completion of today's story. During Samudra Manthan or ocean's churning, two Nagas, Ananta and Vasuki, assisted in the process by Ananta procuring the Meru mountain to be used as the giant stirrer and Vasuki becoming the rope used to churn the ocean, with Devas and Danavas providing the muscle power for churning, holding the two ends of Vasuki. During this process, a white horse the two sisters saw earlier emerged. Many other precious treasures, including the divine nectar, Amrit, Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, the moon, Chandra, among others, also came forth. While the gods were able to acquire the treasures, the Danavas were unable to get the nectar. They felt dejected and decided to forcefully get Amrit and Goddess of Wealth to their side. They managed to get the Amrit, and upon learning this, Vishnu tricked them into handing it back by taking the form of a beautiful enchantress. As Vishnu was distributing the Amrit to the gods, the story of Swarabhanu surfaces. Swarabhanu, pretending to be a god, received the nectar and was recognized and reported by Surya and Chandra, sun and moon. Swarabhanu was beheaded by Vishnu on the spot, and since there was Amrit in his system, both the parts, that is, the head and the body, became immortal, giving birth to Rahu and Ketu, who are always out to get the sun and the moon, causing the phenomenon of eclipses as we know them today. The Danavas became angry, and a fierce battle ensued between the two sides, leading the gods obtaining the nectar and the asuras or the demons getting banished to the lower worlds. Although Nagas, Devas, and Danavas had equal participation in the Samudra Manthan process, the churning, the Amrit remained with the Devas, sowing the seeds for long term enmity between the three groups. Returning to our current storyline, Vinata is anxious to see her second egg hatch. Eventually, a powerful bird hatches from that egg, and it turns out to be Garuda, the king of birds. He takes a flight, and the three worlds tremble at the sight of his magnanimity and strength. But eventually, Garuda becomes the mount of Vishnu. The tale of Vanita and Kadru is not yet complete. However, this episode of this podcast needs to come to an end here. Was Vinata freed from the curse? Did the Nagas get the divine nectar, Amrit? How was Garuda, a bird born to humans Kashyap and Vinata, and how did he, who made the three worlds tremble, become the mount of Lord Vishnu? All these questions will be answered in the next part. We'll also do some sense making of some of the bizarre parts and try to connect the dots and do some synthesis from what we know today. Stay tuned and we'll continue the story in the next installment. Till then, namaste.